Right, so joining me today is Anne Isaacs. Anne and I have known each other for quite some time. It's actually how we met, is I saw Zander running in a race, and I thought, what a divine individual. And I think I came up to you and introduced myself. I can't remember. And I remember you were quite guarded, if I remember. There wasn't an overflow of conversation. But we slowly became friends, and we quickly figured out that Mervyn was an incredible cook, that Zander was extremely talented, and that you were a powerhouse of note and still are. Anne is one of the most dynamic human beings I've probably ever had the privilege of knowing. And I don't say that because she's a friend and I've known her for some time. I say that because besides being a wife and a mother, which are in themselves roles that are quite demanding, you are also someone who has extreme gifting in the law. So would you like to just give us a bit of background about who you are so that our listeners can really kind of tap into the person that is Anne?
Thank you for those kind words. Yes, I can see how I was guarded. But just a little bit about myself. I started my career as a criminal litigator in the criminal courts with the National Prosecuting Authority. So I was very young, and yeah, I spent 12 years litigating on behalf of the state at the magistrates' courts, and then in 2010 I joined the University of Cape Town as their legal counselor in the legal services department with oversight over student discipline. So it actually started with student discipline, very general sort of offenses, breaches of codes of conduct. The shift obviously was quite a big shift from dealing with serious crime, into the higher education environment. But it was a wonderful change, and so I spent 9 years with oversight as a legal counsel for that. And in 2019, I was seconded to start a project in the Office of the Vice Chancellor. And this was in line with the university's vision and mandate for transformation, but very specifically around sexual and gender based violence. Um, Not just the advocacy, there's a separate office that deals with the advocacy, but the idea was to set up a separate, independent disciplinary office that
Mm.
dealt only with breaches of the code of conduct around
Right.
sexual misconduct. And then a year later, we added racism and discrimination. So currently, I manage a unit um, amongst other things, that we deal with the legal disciplinary, but now we do it for staff and students, but only for sexual
Wow.
misconduct, racism, and discrimination. And through
Wow.
that work, um, I think my passion for human rights and the law around human rights really gave me wings. And I
Mm.
started collaborating with national universities as community of practitioners and doing um, little projects with WITS and other universities.
Mm.
And then I was invited to become a member of the California Berkeley a unit that deals with comparative justice and equality, as well as Africa in Sexual Harassment Initiative called Aishi. So yeah, that's my professional background. And Zander, as you know, is my only child, and we've been in Cape Town now for going on to 16 years.
So, like, I wasn't lying, people, when I said that Anne was a powerhouse. Like, I was being genuine. Like, to me, she's just Anne. But then there's this amazing side to you that is so accomplished and so powerful. And just the way you carry that in and of itself is something to be admired, because I know that when you look at it, you kind of go, yes, these are my accomplishments. This is what I do. And it's a very kind of logical, but when those of us standing on the outside of that look at it, we kind of are, it's quite something to behold. Firstly, to be who you are in this day and age and to have worked so hard to get there, notwithstanding all the difficult things that this country has been through and the obstacles and hurdles that you had to go through, jump over, go around, under, through, and to get to the other side. Like, it has to be commended and it has to be noted that when I say you're a powerhouse, I mean it. Like, I truly mean it, because I know that nothing that you have achieved and nowhere that you have gotten has been by being lackadaisical by any means. Like, I know that you're one of the hardest working people I know. But I do want to talk about a rather sensitive topic today, and that is grief. And we know that grief shows up differently for everyone. And for our listeners tuning in, Anne had the most magnificent husband. His name was Mervyn. He was a man of such good character and wonderful standing in the community. He cared for his family deeply and he loved his family deeply. And his love of family was often shown through, he would joke with Anne quite a lot, if I remember correctly. And he cooked. He cooked the most divine food and he made you feel at home and included whenever you were in his home. And I know that losing Mervyn has been life-changing for you. So tell us a little bit about what life was like with Mervyn pre the heart condition. I want to kind of our listeners to get a feel of who Mervyn was before that first initial diagnosis.
Yeah, I think you've described him already in the way that I would see him, but there was so much more to him that I think our Cape Town friends actually didn't know.
Mm.
Because a life stages is different. He was, we were younger in when we lived in KZN, and we were at a different phase here and in the last few years. But I met Mervyn when I was 19, and
All
he
right.
was 23. So my entire adult life
Yeah.
was formed alongside him.
Yeah.
Um, the good, the bad, the challenging parts of life, the crazy personalities. We were both very strong-willed, but we had a lot of fun together. We Everything was a competition, even board games.
Yes.
Who pressed the buzzer first? That was Mervyn and I. But when I think about him, and I think about him every day now. As a 19-year-old, I came from a more traditional background, whereas
Right.
he was a lot more, au fait with more of the Western style of living.
Yes.
And he, and as I think not a lot of people actually know that he loved theater. He introduced me to the theater, and he would take me to watch all these plays at the Playhouse. Durban was the Natal Playhouse, and here the Artscape.
Yeah.
He loved opera, and
Yes.
it would drive me crazy. Play this opera, and he was very cultured. He absolutely loved jazz. In fact,
I
in his
remember
younger
that.
days, yeah, he even owned a jazz club called Satchmo's when he was very young, together with his dad. And he was very cultured with music in a lot of respects, but he was a phenomenal sportsman. So in high
Mm,
school, he had his and as a man, a person of color in the 80s.
right.
He could only go up to a certain stage in terms of his career with cricket, but he had his South African high school colors in cricket. He was a left-hand spin
Wow.
bowler, incredible cricketer. I think it was when he came truly alive, music and sports. And he was very knowledgeable about life, politics, absolutely
Yes.
anything. Whereas I
Yes.
found that my knowledge was very narrow in terms of my work and the things that I was interested. But he actually taught me a lot of things about life. He was also really remarkable with his cooking. He was self-taught and he became an
Yep.
incredible cook, as you all know. He could cook absolutely anything, not just our cultural food. And In the 28 years that we were married, I actually never cooked. I did a few meals, but it really wasn't. Yeah, very early on, I just didn't return to the kitchen, and we loved his food. We were very
Mm.
spoiled in that way. My
Yep.
daughter, when she was born, he would make, separate food. Throughout school, he made her lunches, mine. So he took care of a lot of the things that should have actually been my stuff. But we had our strengths and weaknesses. Like, he hated filling in forms and doing any sort of administration, so that was my forte. And yeah, we did a lot together. We're very close to both our families.
Yeah.
Our social gatherings were very much both our families, etc. And when we came
Mm.
to Cape Town, he took on a lot of the roles of, the role of seeing to Zander. She was in primary school. He was a phenomenal father. It's actually something that I really struggle with, because
Mm.
he was an amazing dad. And yeah, the loss of him in that respect is has been quite it's been quite overwhelming, I think, in some respects.
Yeah.
And his absence is felt on so many levels. So he was a very
Yeah.
active, very engaged person. And then obviously in 2016 he had his first um medical incident with his heart. And as you know, you all were there, and we didn't. The
Mm.
doctors actually had no hope for his recovery. In his sport, that strength and that competitive nature of, I'm going
Yep.
to fight this kind of thing,
Mm.
and he did, and he made a remarkable recovery. And I think Xander and I and our family is very grateful for the extended
Mm.
years that we actually, got with him. And in
For sure.
2018, he had his bypass. And he seemed fine. And then towards the end of 2023, he started to get sick again. And it was nearly a year of in and out of hospitals. And
Right.
sorry, in and out of hospitals, navigating a world that none of us anticipated. And I think we were so and because he had always fought through these incidents, I don't think it ever occurred to us, even though this time was different. He really
Yeah.
struggled. And I think our lives changed long before he actually passed, because
Mm.
it was nearly a year of, and of course, all our family was in other provinces. So, and we have
Yeah.
amazing friends here, but people have, busy lives as well. And so a lot of the navigating the illness was just me and Xander. And I had a full-time job. I was involved in all these extra projects, the national
Yeah.
projects. Um, with other universities, a lot of it's social responsibility work that I had taken on as well. And I wasn't, I couldn't just let it go. And when he got
Sure.
sick, Xander would have been in her third year of
That's
her
right.
medical degree, which is a heavy load. But it was
Very.
incredible how she and I walked alongside him, and whenever she could, she would just come to the hospital with us. There were multiple appointments, getting him to different doctors, because obviously from the one condition there was just a domino effect on others. The
Right.
interesting thing is that it was a very hard journey even
Mm.
before he passed.
Yep.
But in that journey, we actually shared a lot of,
Mm.
we packed so much in that period of, getting into a vehicle, getting to a hospital, sitting, waiting for the appointments, catching a lunch. And, we used to love fancy lunches, but, and there we were having our lunches in all the hospital
Yeah.
cafeterias. And it became, and I would take my laptop with. I worked for nearly a year, I worked wherever I was, in an Uber, in
Yes.
a hospital. It became a way of life. And actually, we weren't even thinking about it. We just did. We just did
Mm.
what we needed to do. And he was so positive, and yeah, he was. Yeah, the three of us had to navigate a very difficult, very, very difficult, emotionally difficult, because
Yeah.
he went from being the person that kind of took care of a lot of the practical things, whilst I
Yes.
could do focus on work, career,
Yeah.
my social responsibility work. He
Mm.
was, our daughter's also a dancer, and so he managed, all the rehearsals, costumes, taking it to the theater when it's dress rehearsals. It's something I
Mm.
didn't quite enjoy, and he actually won dance dad title, an unofficial
Oh.
title, as
Oh.
dance dad of the year. So even during his illness, it was quite difficult, to see
Mm.
him not, and he felt frustrated. But we had
Mm.
a lot of laughter in between the anxiety and the constant not knowing what was going to happen. I think the three of us, when we were together, there was a synergy that worked.
Mhm.
We didn't
Mhm.
we didn't agree on many things. We had such different personalities,
Mm.
and yet
Mm.
I know it sounds so absurd. We agreed on nothing, and yet we agreed on everything. If that makes sense.
That kind of makes
But the
sense, actually.
Yeah, uh, we agreed on the important parts, and we would laugh about the things that we didn't. But yeah, if said the wall was cream, I'd say not exactly. It's a different shade of cream. It was that kind of a thing. Um, so it was. I think it was a very interesting. It was a very interesting journey for my daughter watching us, and she said something very interesting recently. And she said, if ever I had to choose a love story, I'd still choose you and Dad. And I said, why? And she said, because it was so authentic, and it was
Yeah.
so who the two of you were. And one would have to be blind to not see how deeply connected the two of you really were. And
Mm.
I think that's all I needed to hear, that the
Mm.
impact of, because she lived with us, she's watched all the journeys, and through
Yeah.
the illness it was not easy for her as well. But I think
No.
neither of us actually thought that he was going to die. And I think that was a very difficult journey. Like, through the whole year that we were in and out of hospitals, and he actually was in hospital sometimes 10 days, 30 days. And the last time he went into hospital, he was actually in hospital for 52 days.
Wow.
And that was 52 days of me leaving home at 2 o'clock, working in the morning, then taking my laptop, getting to the hospital at 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then I would sit with him, and I would work from the hospital. I would take meetings standing outside the hospital, actually.
Yeah.
It was quite, but we didn't think about it. We just did it. And
Right.
he wanted us close when he was in hospital. And so I would just stay at the hospital, and take a little break at 6 o'clock, and then stay with him again and we would leave the hospital at around 9:30, 10 o'clock in the night.
Yeah.
And Xander would, obviously join us when she was done at campus, and it became a new way of life for those 52 days. And the only days I didn't go was if I was sick and I didn't want him to catch anything.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm.
we didn't limit going out. We did an art project together, the three of us, and he was actually using a walker by then.
Yes.
But we still went. We still, did a lot of things. But the last
Mm.
52 days in the hospital was a very, very difficult journey. He had a fall in the hospital, and I would just drop
Mm.
everything and get there completely. I lived in a perpetual state of anxiety.
Yeah.
I was so afraid to put my phone on silent at night in case the hospital would call. But then I also needed to put the phone on silent because I needed to sleep in order to get to the hospital the next
Yeah.
day. So it was a very complicated life. And we
Yeah.
just did it. It was difficult, and Zander and I and Zander did so much when he was at home, helping him change the he had fallen and his arm was in a sling at one stage, and she would help him get that off and get dressed. And um
Mm.
she
Mm.
watching her at the age of 22 care for him in that way was something that was incredible to watch, managing her studies, and
Mm.
being absolutely present for her father. I have so much respect for her, that she
Mm.
managed. I mean, he loved her being around. So, and even in the hospital, as difficult as it was emotionally, she would take the nurse's emergency thingy,
Yep.
and she would use it as a mic and sing to him. Um, she'd take
I
him
can actually
little
picture Xander doing that actually.
she she would
Yep.
sing to him. But I think she managed it that way. But I was overly anxious. I asked, I think I really rattled some of the medical staff for answers on everything, and
Yeah.
constantly calling the doctors. I lived in a very, very anxious mode. Everything
Mm.
was, I looked at his medication a million times, Googled research, and I had a lot of support from family and his one cousin,
Mm.
who's a doctor, and she was incredible, absolutely incredible. I
Mm.
have no words to even describe the emotional and mental support that she gave us despite the time difference, and one or two of his other cousins, and
Yeah.
the family. We had a lot of love from a lot of people, but
Yes.
the practicalities of managing someone who was such a vibrant person, on that journey for nearly a year, it was difficult, just the three of us.
It's emotionally, physically, and mentally taxing because you are living in a state of survival. You are living in a state of fight or flight. You are waiting for something to happen. Literally, you're waiting for the bottom to fall out, and for you, inexplicably, it did. It did. The bottom did fall out. It did change.
And I think for me, if you recall, I think Jax, you all were part of that 2016 journey when he was sick, and I
Mm.
wanted to control I wanted to control the outcome, and I
Mm.
think that was and I mean, you guys and know, the same. I would go to the doctors and I would demand, a really long,
Mm.
in-depth discussions. I needed to understand his
For
condition,
sure.
his medication, and I did
Mm.
that. I did that since 2016, right to the end. Um, whether he was in Cape Town or whether he was working in Durban, I still managed the medication. I would call the pharmacy when he was in Durban, make sure, I would read the
Mhm.
script because I was always afraid that he'd be given the wrong dosage or the wrong
For
medication.
sure.
So, but even in the year that he was sick before he passed, when he was here, I think I had this unrealistic need. I think it's my personality where everything has to be solutions
Mm.
driven, and controlling the outcome. And I
Mm.
think in that moment on the last day, um, we were waiting outside the theater, and when we saw the surgeon, he's a tall um, gentleman walking from the theater. I still didn't think that was the outcome. And when he put his hands on my shoulder and Xander's shoulder and said, you know, he didn't make it. I think that was the single most devastating experience I've ever had. The shock. I think the
Mm.
shock of
Mm.
realizing we cannot control certain things.
No.
And that was very overwhelming. It was crushing. I still thought no, you're wrong. That can't be the
Yeah.
outcome. That it simply cannot.